Hello and welcome to my presentation on avoiding and overcoming burnout. I really appreciate you all being here today, and I'm hoping I'll be able to share some wisdom from my own experiences with burnout. Oh, there we go. So before I start, I just wanted to share my experiences with Reed and the Women in Technology group, just so you don't all think, well, why is she here? So this group has been quite a significant part of my life. I first used Reed Women in Technology Mentoring around 3 years ago now, when I saw a LinkedIn advert offering a mentorship program. In all honesty, I was feeling really quite lost at that point in time. And so I used that opportunity to connect with my first ever external mentor. And she fundamentally changed my life. So I know I owe an awful lot to her, and obviously to the women group for helping that connection take place. It very much empowered me to get into the position that I am working today. Through the group, obviously, as well as able to meet like-minded people, find new training courses that others were talking about, and just generally feel more comfortable with my space and with my platform. So with that in mind, my name is Rebecca. I live just outside London with my husband and my two kids, who are 3 and 6 years old. I've been in the cybersecurity industry now for 10 years, and I've worked my way up the ladder. I actually started as a personal assistant, so making teas and coffees, then moved into a change management role, then into incident command, and now I'm officially a threat intelligence knowledge manager in the SecureX counter threat unit. Without being a big head, I've won a few different awards as of recent, namely for my work around diversity, equity and inclusion in cybersecurity. Happy to talk about that offline because I don't want to sit here talking about that. But as we go through this presentation, it is going to feel like maybe I'm talking a lot about myself, but I find that when you're talking about topics like this, it's better to tell a story, because there may be points where you go, oh, yeah, I feel like that, or oh, that is relatable, or that sounds like me. So hopefully that is what will float into your minds, as opposed to, gosh, she really likes to talk about herself. So before we dig into my experiences of burnout, I feel it's important, as I said, to share some info about me. So to begin with, my career journey, as I said, I started as an EA, and I knew very early on that I wanted more. I've always been someone that's really pushed herself very hard. I moved quickly, so every 2 years or so, I've moved into different roles. So from the EA role into resource coordination, where I started having my first interactions with customers, understanding their scoping needs and connecting them with appropriate resources such as IR, technical testing, that kind of stuff. And it was during that role as resource coordinator that I had my first child. I then went on mat leave for 6 months, came back into a business change management role, convincing people that change is a good thing, and adapting our processes, procedures and tools to equip internal teams. 2 years later, I was pregnant again, and so I went off to have my second child. When I came back, I was given the opportunity to move into incident command, and that was brand new and had never existed at SecureX before. I was responsible for the processes, procedures, and communication management of all of our major incidents. And whilst it was a huge opportunity, I don't think I've ever been as stressed as I was whilst I was in that role. Across 18 months, I worked 50 odd major incidents that were predominantly ransomware. It was a huge learning curve. I completed a couple of technical courses whilst doing that, but it was intense. And so when the opportunity came to move into the counter threat unit, I jumped at the chance in 2022, and obviously I'm still here at the moment. In terms of my TI role, I do work full time. I'm focused on the implementation of knowledge management processes and procedures for the counter threat unit, or CTU, the ingestion and management of our threat intelligence, and the quality, storage and maintenance around that. My goal as an individual is to make sure that our knowledge is captured, that it's fit for use and it's trustworthy. And then I focus on making sure it's searchable and accessible to the different tools and teams that need it. So I have quite a big role. There's a lot going on. I like to push myself. I like change. I like keeping moving forward. But I also like to give back. I feel very fortunate to have my platform, to have my space, and I want others to have the same opportunities. So I also have a lot of what I call extracurricular activities going on. So I'm secretary for my school PTA. We've got a fair at the weekend that I'm preparing for. I'm a board advisor now to a nonprofit called Cybaid, who help charities and small businesses with their cybersecurity needs. I do a lot of public speaking. I'm a mentor. I'm a STEM ambassador. I speak at lots of different schools. I like to write and blog. In essence, I'm super duper busy. Now, good or bad, there's two things I've done throughout my whole cybersecurity career. The first is I get what I describe as the itch, and that's not a skin condition. It's to do with my career. It's my urge to take on more, not to get bored, not to get really complacent. I think it's part of my own personality type. I do think it's a female trait though as well, to take lots on, to juggle lots. For me, it's almost been trying to prove myself and keep progressing. I don't want to be left behind. So I get itchy, which is why I think every 2 years I'm like, what else can I do now? The other part of me, as I've kind of hinted, is that I like to take on a challenge. I really don't like to be quiet. I like to be busy. I like to work with lots of different groups. I like to learn constantly. Now, these sound like really positive things, but they have got me into trouble. So you've heard about me, you've heard about my role, you've heard about my 2-year itch, you've heard my extracurricular list. Well, back in April 2023, I was doing even more than that. I was also trying to study for quite a big qualification. It was like a 60-hour course with a 4-hour exam. I was trying to gain some technical pieces because I was going through that period of my life of I feel I need to know more because I'm not sure I should be where I am. I was doing a research project about the charity sector. And so, like most things, when one thing goes wrong, everything starts to go wrong. And I was really working at my absolute capacity. I don't think at that point in April I'd really acknowledged the burnout I was feeling. I'd kept trying to plow on and just get it done. I'm very much a let's get it done kind of person. And then when everything started to fall down, it all started to go wrong. So I first off became unwell and my family became unwell. Both the kids are off sick at home. I'm trying to do my job. I'm trying to do all my other stuff. Oh gosh, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Because of that, I also then started to fall behind in my studies. So my exam was looming. I felt underprepared. So there's another stressor. And then out of nowhere, my landlady decided to sell our home. And served us with 8 weeks to find somewhere new to live. And so suddenly everything fell. I'd been pushing myself for such a long time. I'd not been looking after myself. I'd not spoken to anyone. As I said, I was just trying to get stuff done and just crack on. And so when life went wrong, it became, as I described, the perfect storm for burnout, which is exactly what happened. I became both physically and mentally unwell. I had to take time off work. I had to get help from my GP. And ultimately, I just had to stop. And that was my first fully fledged experience with burnout. Now, as I said in the beginning, I want to be open with you because I want, if you're feeling these kinds of things, to know that I'm here, that others are here. And these are the kinds of phrases I was saying to my husband. I can't do it anymore. I just want to stay in bed in the dark. I don't want to move. I can't do this. I'm totally overstimulated. I'm overwhelmed. Why am I doing everything? I think we've all shouted that at one point. Why do I have to do everything? I'm exhausted. Um, and that was my experience of burnout. I just entirely shut down. So that's my personal story. And I think a lot of people have experienced burnout in different forms. I think I let mine get to the point where it'd gone too far. But according to Mental Health UK, burnout is a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been managed. It can lead to energy depletion or exhaustion. You can end up distancing yourself. So where I said I just shut down, shut the curtain, stop talking, that was it for me. Feelings of negativity and reduced professional efficacy. The symptoms of burnout, which again may relate, were feeling tired or drained most of the time, feeling helpless, trapped, kind of defeated. You're not doing your best, you're not doing well, feeling alone, feeling negative, self-doubt, taking longer to get things done. Have you ever just stared at that screen and you just can't bring yourself to do it? And that feeling of being overwhelmed. So, some context. 9 in 10 adults experienced high or extreme stress in the past year. 1 in 5 workers, so 20% in the UK, needed to take time off work in the past year due to poor mental health caused by that pressure or stress. And almost a quarter of UK adults feel unable to manage stress and the pressures in their lives, with 23% of this group not feeling comfortable to talk to their own leadership, their own businesses about the stress they were feeling. Burnout is very real. I think a lot of us are under a lot more pressure than we've ever been before with just the way the world is. And so hopefully this context will help you see that there's a lot of people experiencing it, and actually more and more people are being open about that. The Burnout report by Mental Health UK dug even deeper, and I think shines a light on things we're all again guilty of doing. 54% of those who experienced burnout agreed that increased workload and tasks were the reason for that burnout, for simply taking on too much. 45% had been working above and beyond doing unpaid overtime, and that had added up. Again, who's been a bit cheeky and has sat there past cut-off time working in the evening trying to get things done? And 42% felt that isolation at work and not opening up had contributed. Again, I think this shift to us, a lot of us being remote workers, has impacted that. A lot of us are more distanced than we were this time a few years ago. When burnout happened for me, as I've said, I closed the shop front. I removed myself until I recovered, and in all honesty, I'm in a much healthier and happier position now. And so, with that hindsight, with that knowledge, I wanted to share some tips with you on how to avoid, how to overcome the nightmare that is burnout. So, lesson number 1 is to identify your stressors. Once you know where the issue lies, it's far easier to handle. So, lots of folks, when they're in that emergency stage of burnout, will say it's everything that stresses me out. I'm just everything in my life. But 9 out of 10 times when we dig deeper through self-reflection, through analysis, even counselling, a handful of key moments or stressors can be identified. It's really important that we know that the stresses can be anything that makes you uncomfortable, that makes you overwhelmed, or doesn't bring you joy, but that you have to do anyway. So examples could be balancing childcare. Obviously, we love our children, but owning that responsibility and accountability that come with it can be overwhelming. Other examples, if we think about neurodivergent individuals, it could be big social events. Being forced to go to a big corporate event can be a stressor. It could be your friendships. It could even be certain tasks or projects at work. Once you know what your stresses are, you have to challenge it. Realistically, you can change them. Have you spoken to people? Have you shared the pressure that it's causing? Could it be shared more equally? We need to break them down and challenge those individual concerns. Lesson number 2, which I've also done, is to make yourself unavailable. You do not have to do everything. You don't have to prove yourself because you are where you are because you work blooming hard to get there. It's not for any other reason. Take on enough to keep yourself busy, but that you have the space to breathe and do things that balance your well-being. It is absolutely okay to say no. It's okay to block out your calendar. It's okay to be unavailable. With that in mind, I know some people are horrified by the idea of saying no to their manager. No, I won't do what you told me to do. But you can set the boundaries. For example, I can't do this now, but I can do it next week, next month. I can't do this now unless I drop something else. Mr. Manager, Mrs. Manager, can you tell me what I should focus on, which is a priority? It's okay to have those conversations, and it's absolutely fine to make yourself unavailable. Lesson number 3 is to find a connection. So the burnout report that I've spoken about already found that adults in the UK agreed having a supportive network of family or friends outside of work, having a healthy work-life balance, exercise, having a supportive line manager, having a supportive network of professional colleagues or peers made a difference. You need to find a connection with a person, a peer, with an activity, with a gym, with an outlet to give you the space to breathe and to recalibrate. Lesson number 4 is balance is important. So we all have this threshold within us of what feels normal, what we can tolerate, and what we can manage. Sometimes that threshold, that line in the sand, sometimes we go a little bit over it for a little bit of time, but we know to come back down. Sometimes we're maybe just under, maybe we're having a more chilled day. We all need to consciously consider what our threshold, what our line in the sand actually is, and how long we can persist when we are over that threshold. What is the price of overbalancing one way? For me, and I think for a lot of us, if you push too hard for too long, if you go over that threshold for too long, you burn out. We all need to try and find a healthy balance where we achieve what we want as a professional, but also as a person. And finally, lesson 5 is to make time for well-being and self-care. And this is probably the one I struggle with the most. So well-being doesn't have to be a yoga retreat. It doesn't have to be that you take up meditation or therapies. It's whatever well-being means to you. Um, I think so often as females, maybe as mothers, I think some of us will be, we park our well-being to one side whilst we attempt to survive and get everything else done. So my incentive to you, my call to you is to get that dentist appointment, to speak to your GP if you haven't been feeling right, to have a medical, to sort out your eyebrows, to get your hair done, whatever will give you peace and means you have a set time aside for yourself. Make time for well-being and for your own self-care. And so how did I overcome it? How am I now? So I embraced my 5 lessons fully. I had a medical at the beginning of this year, and we actually found out I was pre-diabetic. Knowing this gave me the chance to turn it around, and now I'm out of the risk category. But if I hadn't stopped, if I hadn't lived by these rules, I'd never have known. I actively now decline stuff, believe it or not. I physically can't do it all, and I shouldn't have to. I took time off, not to cover childcare, but actually just to do something for myself. And I did it entirely alone. So that is something I advocate for. I got a coach who helped me personally and professionally develop. And finally, I had chats with my leader about my thresholds, about what wasn't bringing me joy and what I actually wanted, instead of going, yeah, of course, yeah, of course, yeah, of course. Um, and they were incredibly fruitful moments and conversations for me. I think I will probably always be an overworker. Maybe my threshold is a little bit higher than it probably should be, but I'm now consciously trying to make positive changes to try and keep that burnout at bay. So this is where I'm going to wrap up. If you don't remember anything from today, if this is all a blur and this is actually your time of stepping out from your office space, please remember that you are not alone. There are support channels beyond work. There are charities and organisations out there who want to help and support. Please take the time to talk to someone and don't let it get to the point that you make yourself unwell. And I will throw it out there that my LinkedIn door is always open as a space to talk, as a safe space to get help, for me to signpost whatever it is. Please don't feel alone. Know that there's people out there that want to help you. And so that is me done.